All right, let's talk about something that is, quite literally, the absolute bedrock of programming: JavaScript functions. Seriously, if you want to write code that's not just working, but powerful, clean, and efficient, well, you've got to master functions. So, let's dive in.
So to really get why functions are so amazing, we first have to talk about a problem that, trust me, every single person who learns to code runs into. And that problem is repetition, just writing the same stuff over and over and over again.
I mean, does this sound familiar at all? You're copying and pasting the same chunk of code, maybe changing a number here or a word there. Yeah, it gets the job done, but it's messy. And, what happens when you need to fix a bug? You have to find every single place you pasted that code. It's a total nightmare.
Okay, and this is what I'm talking about. Look at the difference here. On the left, that's the messy way, right? The copy-paste job. But on the right, that's the elegant, clean solution. We define the idea of adding two numbers just once, and then we can reuse it as much as we want. That little bit of magic, that's a function.
So, let's meet our hero. The best way to think about a function is like a reusable machine that you build yourself. You spend a little time defining exactly what job it's supposed to do, and from then on, you can just call on it to do that job for you anytime you need.
And here's the official definition, which really nails it: a block of reusable code that performs a specific task. And those two words right there, reusable and specific, that's the whole game. You want your functions to do one thing and do it really, really well.
I love this analogy because it makes so much sense. Think of it like a blender. You put in the inputs, your fruit, your yogurt, that's step one. The machine runs its process. It blends everything together, that's step two. And then you get an output, a smoothie, that's step three. Functions work in exactly the same way. Inputs, a process, and an output.
All right, let's look at some actual code. This is about as simple as it gets. We've created a function, we've named it greet, and its only job in the entire world is to print hello world. It's the classic for a reason. It shows you the core structure with zero distractions.
Okay, so let's actually pull that apart piece by piece. First, you've got the function keyword. That's you telling JavaScript, hey, I'm about to build one of those reusable machines. Then you give your machine a name, in this case, greet. The parentheses are where our inputs will go later. And finally, those curly braces, everything inside them is the actual work, the process that the machine performs.
Now, this is super important. Just writing the function doesn't make it run. It's like you've built this awesome machine, but it's just sitting there unplugged. To actually switch it on and make it do its job, you have to call it. And you do that simply by writing its name, followed by those parentheses.
Okay, so we've got a basic machine. It does one thing. But what if we want to make it, smarter, more flexible? That's where inputs and outputs come in. This is how we give our functions real power.
And this is where the magic really starts to happen. See inside the parentheses now? We've added a parameter called name. You can think of it like a little empty box or a placeholder waiting for a value. Then, when we call the function, we pass in a value, an argument like a nunt. That value gets put into the name box, and suddenly our function is dynamic. It can greet anyone.
Okay, so printing something to the screen is cool, but what if you need the function to actually give you something back, a value that you can save and use somewhere else in your code? That's what return is for. This add function doesn't just display the answer, it calculates the sum and then hands it back to you.
So what's happening here is that the return keyword basically says, okay, my job is done, here's your answer. It stops the function right there and sends the value of a plus b back out. And because it gives us a value back, we can catch it and store it in a variable, like result. This is how you make functions that are truly useful building blocks.
All right, just a quick heads up. As you start looking at more JavaScript code out in the wild, you're going to see functions written in a few different ways. Don't let it throw you off. They all pretty much do the same thing. It's just different, different styles, different flavors. Let's quickly look at the big three. This table does a great job of breaking them down. The declaration, that's the classic style we've been using. Then there's the expression, which is really interesting because you're storing the whole function inside a variable. And that opens up some really advanced, powerful stuff later on. And finally, the arrow function. It's the new kid on the block. Shorter, sleeker, and you're going to see it everywhere in modern code. And just look at how clean that is. That one line of code does the exact same thing as our add function from a few slides ago. Arrow functions are amazing for keeping your code short and readable. And, just so you know, They also have some other special properties that become really important in more complex situations. But for now, just appreciate the simplicity.
So, we've gone through the what and the how. But let's bring it all home and really hammer down the why. Why are functions not just a nice-to-have, but an absolutely essential part of being a good programmer? It really boils down to these three things. Reusability is obvious. Write it once, use it a million times. Cleaner code is huge. Instead of 20 lines of confusing logic, you just have one line that says calculate invoice total. Instantly, you know what it does. And modularity. That's how you tackle huge projects. You don't build a whole car at once. You build an engine, a wheel, a door. You build small, manageable pieces.
And if you're thinking, okay, but where would I actually use this? Well, literally everywhere. Every single time you've clicked a submit or like button on a website, guess what? You triggered a function. That click event is tied to a specific function, just like this one, that's programmed to run and do something.
Look, if your brain is full and you can only remember one thing from all of this, let it be this sentence. This is it. This is the whole idea in a nutshell. It's reusable, it does one thing, it can take stuff in, and it can give stuff back. If you get that, you get functions.
So there you have it, the function. It's not just a piece of code, it's your go-to tool, your coding superhero. It's the most fundamental building block for creating, well, anything you can imagine. So the only real question is, now that you've got it, what are you going to build first?